Hey, this is Will Knight, and we're back with a podcast all about nothing. And today we are in the FBI.
Yes.
And my guest today is Mike. And I know Mike for over 20 years. And I convinced him finally to do a podcast with me and hopefully write a book on his time at the FBI. Welcome, Mike.
Yeah, you've been bugging me about that for quite a while now. You think I'm very interesting? We'll see.
So, Mike, tell our audience, how did you get to the FBI? So let's start off when you were like 21 years old.
Sure. So I went into the military right out of high school.
Okay.
Believe it or not, all I wanted to do was get out of South Dakota.
Okay.
So shocker, right? And initially I was a diet therapy specialist, which was preparing specialty food
Okay.
for airmen and soldiers and other U.S. military that would come to the hospital in San Antonio, Texas. So they might have special dietary needs, and so I went to technical training to basically be a nutritionist and diet therapy specialist.
All right.
And then while I was there, a very good friend, mentor, saw a posting about the need for Russian interpreters to be trained.
Really?
Yeah, and he said, "You're much better than what you're doing now. You need to apply for that." So I took a test, an aptitude test for languages, and I scored very well, and I was selected. And next thing I knew, I was in language training in Monterey, California.
Speaking Russian.
Learning Russian.
Learning Russian.
Which took 2 years.
Okay.
That was maybe just shy of 2 years, but it's literally 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, an hour of homework minimum each night, 3 to 5 hours of homework over the weekend for a year and a half.
Wow. And then where did you go from there?
So I did 3 years as a chemical weapons inspector, Russian interpreter, traveling all over the former Soviet Union and a lot of Europe during those efforts. And then finally got out in the mid-90s and went back home to South Dakota.
No, you weren't working for the FBI at this time, were you?
I was not. This is all leading up to why I became qualified to work at the FBI. So I
Okay.
had that background, and then when I went home, did some odd jobs, had a lot of fun, but then got serious again, and I became a police officer and worked the streets, did some crime prevention, and then that led me to ultimately, casually, honestly, applying for the FBI, thinking I could do this, I could do that. You know, in your late 20s, you can do anything.
Right, you could do everything.
You can do everything, and it's all on your time frame. And I literally wandered into, and not knowing that my skill set was fairly highly prized.
Okay.
And so I did all the applications, did the interviews, testing, etc., and I got hired.
All right. So just to let everybody know, I met Mike during the Governor's Convention here in Chicago many years ago.
Many.
And I was working as the communication fire department specialist, and he was an FBI agent at the time, and that's how we met, and we just hit it off from there. But Mike, so tell everybody, how did you, because you have a military background,
Yes.
how did that come along?
So I think the confluence of like my skill set to what was the demand by the FBI was that I was a Russian interpreter, so that could have led to me being used for counterintelligence purposes, obviously, but there's also Russian organized crime. So if you look on the criminal side of the house instead of the national security side of the house, that was applicable. I had chemical weapons experience, and of course, right after 9/11, which is when I got hired, chemical weapons knowledge was extremely valuable because of, WMD
Right.
and the war on terror. So I had a skill set that kind of was multi-applicable to what the FBI's priorities were.
Okay. And now you're retired.
I am retired in 2022. Can you believe it?
Congratulations.
52 years old.
So tell our audience, can you give us a little bit of background of like a couple of cases that you worked on?
Sure. So obviously I have to be careful because, there's sensitivities to the victims
Right.
and stuff like that. But in broad general terms, some of my most satisfying cases were when I worked in South Dakota. I did a lot of human trafficking cases, unfortunately, At the time, there was quite a few instances in Sioux Falls in particular where I worked of underage females, children, let's call them what they are, they're children, being trafficked for sex by former or expat gang members from Chicago had relocated to Sioux Falls. So one as young as 13.
Oh, wow.
And so she was trafficked across southeastern South Dakota and beyond state lines to earn money for their pimp. And so luckily we got onto these schemes, and I worked 3 cases. To the best of my recollection, I mean, I had more, but 3 of them resulted in pretty extensive cases, identifying victims, getting them the help that they need, and at least 2 life sentences for these pimps for what they did to destroy these young women's, young ladies, children's lives, and the lifelong impact of being that traumatized, crazy.
So do the young ladies come from the United States, or do they come from different countries?
These were all homegrown Midwest girls. They were, at times, some of them were like what we'd call troubled youth, which is easily targeted by these predators. In fact, one of them used to hang outside a gas station near what was called an alternative high school for maybe kids that had some more behavioral problems that they needed to have kind of more isolated, targeted teaching, and they may have been disruptive in other high school settings. So they went to this alternative high school, and this predator pimp would sit by that school, and as the girls would walk by, he would just openly solicit them. Do you need to make money? Hey, you look good. Complimenting these, young girls that needed that type of attention from their families, but not from these pimps. So, and it's very sad. But yeah, they were basically local girls.
Okay. And the pimps, they come from all over.
Yeah.
They're not really, are they American, Russian, or other nationalities?
For these cases, they were primarily transplants from other places, from larger cities.
Yeah.
One had come over from former Iraq in the late 80s, early 90s. So there was no rhyme or reason to why they did what they did, other than, I guess, a criminal intent to make money off of somebody's misery.
So was that the majority of your cases in the FBI, or was it just some?
So those were the most satisfying, among the most satisfying, because at the time, throughout the FBI's entire history, it had only gotten like 9 life sentences for convictions.
So Mike, sorry to interrupt you during a break.
Yeah, sure.
But the FBI, is this some of the larger cases you had with the FBI?
Oh yeah, I think we before we had an interruption there, sorry. So that was the most satisfying as far as kind of impactful cases as far as the human trafficking. But here in Chicago, one of the more interesting ones was a young man who had come under the sway of and become convinced that he needed to take some more direct action in support of a jihadist worldview.
Okay.
And so we became concerned that he had quite a few relationships with people that shared his views, and had indications that he was willing to undertake an attack.
Got it.
And so one of the more fun things, if you want to call it fun, was we were surveilling him one day, and it was fairly high priority surveillance based on how far the plot had developed and what we were concerned about. And I was following him, and he unexpectedly decided to go into the Amtrak station downtown. I'm like, uh-oh, what's going on here? So I called my boss and I said, hey, looks like he's going on a trip. And the boss says, get on the train with him. And I did. And
no suitcase. No, nothing. Just
just
closing your
get on
back.
the train with him. And it was one of those. Obviously, if we had any idea to plan for, we would have.
Right.
But so I followed him for 36 hours to Flagstaff, Arizona, where I was met by my partner on the case, and he picked me up. We again followed him to Phoenix, where our Phoenix office people helped us out tremendously, and then the case proceeded from there. But it's pretty fascinating to like just find yourself, and that's what I called like my Mulder and Scully moment.
Yeah.
Because typically the FBI, that doesn't happen.
Right.
I mean, holy moly.
So
typically that doesn't happen
right.
when you're an unplanned event like that. But because of the priority of the subject, we had to do what we had to do. And like I said, I call that my X-Files moment, because the show, which I love,
Yeah.
but it's incredibly unrealistic, where they're getting on a plane and flying to Okoboji, or they're flying to all these different places, or driving, and it just doesn't happen that way.
But you did.
But I did that
Yeah,
in
you
that
did.
instance. And the funniest part of it was, at that time in that particular car, Amtrak assigned us by car to go to the dining car if you wanted to eat, and so I ended up being sat next to him, and ended up
Really?
having breakfast at the same table with him, and him not knowing what my job was and what I was doing. It was
So what was
pretty
like
fascinating.
some of the conversations?
He was talking about he had a PlayStation Plus, a PSP portable, and he had Spider-Man on it, and how excited he was, and but it was a very generic conversation. But it was odd for me, because I knew then kind of what he was like, and what he was talking about, and what his intentions were, and how much he purported to hate this country that afforded him the opportunity to just leave and get on a train and go visit friends, and
Right.
visit these people that shared his same worldview. So he lived indicting the benefits of this society, and wanting to crush it, but he couldn't do it without the benefits that society provided. So just like it's funny, because he didn't see that, and it's tragic more than anything in the true meaning of the word. There's a tragedy, like that he lived that and made those decisions he did. He ultimately was sentenced to 35 years for material support for terrorism. So
Were you at his trial? Did you arrest him personally, or did you leave it to somebody
we
else?
arrested him at what the FBI calls a takedown, but it was a takedown of one. Ultimately, I interviewed him with my partner, and
Did he recognize you from the train?
nope,
Really?
nope, because I think his mind was elsewhere.
Were you in disguise like Tom Cruise and
I'm about the most generic, unmemorable. Is that the word?
Yeah.
Like people don't commit me to memory because I'm very generic. But at the end of the interview, he did thank me for, and thank us, and he actually thanked the FBI for stopping him from doing what he had planned, because he said whatever would have came, I would have done it, and unless you guys would have stopped me, and now that I am stopped and I'm withdrawn from that environment and culture of talking with these guys every day, like I'm so happy you stopped me. So whether or not that was sincere at the time or something he thought he just had to say because he was under arrest by the FBI, it was pretty compelling, I thought.
And now he has 35 years to think about this.
Yep.
Do you think that he will ever get paroled, or?
FBI's and federal time is very different than
Yeah.
state time for good behavior and all
Okay.
that. So, yeah, it'll be a while. I mean, but it was unfortunate, but he had taken quite a few overt steps to accomplish what he had in mind, to the point where he sold some highly valuable, like personal property. Actually, he was going to trade it, and we had an undercover operation where he was going to trade this property for hand grenades and handguns. And unbeknownst to him, when he was arrested, he was selling that to an undercover cop. But we had inert hand grenades and inoperable guns. And when he went to make the exchange, he was arrested. So his intent was clear, and his actions were clear and appropriately sanctioned by the government.
And people, this is the reason I want him to write a book, because he's worked some very interesting cases.
Yeah, and you know, the funny thing is, well, it is about the cases, but it's also the process and the dialogue that happens internally with yourself to reconcile, like, the tragedy of this young man that was, you know, influenced by these bad characters, and you can't help but think that this was a tragic waste of potential. Like, had he been influenced by the more responsible, more appropriate people, or if he had maybe a better education. I'm not a bleeding heart liberal guy. I think he's where he belongs because of what he did, but I think it's just a waste of potential that he went down that road.
Mind and life.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. That's what's valuable about the job.
Yeah. So, would you recommend someone to go into the FBI?
Oh, that's a loaded question, isn't it? You know, today in
in general.
In the fall of 2025, in this political environment, I think everybody has to make their own decisions about what they value. And when I went in, and the way that I served and the people I worked for, my mission was clearly defined. I knew the lefts and rights of my responsibility and my authority, and I was never once asked to exceed that. I would not have done that. I worked with a clear conscience about what my purpose was.
Yeah.
And now being retired for going on 3 years, I guess, or a little bit more than that, I don't know if that mission and its clear principles are that well defined. And I don't know, I'm not on the ground anymore, but personally, as I look at it, I wouldn't be surprised if people would now be taking a second look about what the mission of the FBI is, how insulated it is from political pressure, how dedicated are you to the rule of law versus obedience to a politician.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would have to have serious concerns. In fact, if people ask me all the time, if you were still there, what would happen? And I don't know if I would have lasted under this administration. If it continued to do to the FBI what it appears to be doing in public media press reports.
Yeah. What do you, and we're not going to go deep into politics because I don't want that here. But
and you feel free to edit that out.
No, that's fine.
Because it is a landmine,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
But my question is, if you meet, let's say, or mentoring someone, because I suppose you mentored somebody before, while you were in the FBI or Air Force, or anywhere, would you guide them towards the FBI and they worked on law enforcement?
Well, I certainly would. I mean, I think there's still dignity and honor in public service. And I think as an entry-level agent, you're fairly insulated. You do the job that you're assigned.
Yeah.
But what I really took to heart during our agent training was we went to the Holocaust Museum as part of agent training. And we spent a day there, and we got briefings and trainings, and the overarching concern and lesson, I guess, of the museum and the purpose we visited it is to understand the rule of law and how it can be corrupted, and when, as a public servant, do you say no to orders or demands that really go against your own principles and what your perception of right and wrong is. And they relate that back to the gendarmerie or just the typical criminal police in Nazi Germany, that rather than face firing and loss of their career because they said no to rounding up Jews or homosexuals. They went along and they said okay, and they therefore legitimized these government actions.
Yeah.
So that really hit home with me about what I perceive to be the very deadly serious earnestness of the way the FBI perceived its role in society.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be part of that.
How do you feel about leaving the FBI when you did?
I mean, it's always bittersweet. You leave, it's almost like the military. You leave a community of like-minded people. When I say that, going back to politics, there's all kinds.
Right.
But within the FBI, the thing that I liked is politics basically stopped at the front gate to the building, and people were like-minded in mission, like-minded in purpose, guided by pretty strict protocols and guidelines that were not easily deviated from.
Yeah.
And so being part of that community, almost like that band of brothers in the army during combat, you get that. I mean, you're doing things like, 8 hours of surveillance, sitting in the same car with your partner, and
Or bomb school training, or
anything, right?
tactical.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're doing firearms training, you're doing building entries, and you have that, like, you need to have my back. And so that's very few vocations where you get that level of interdependence on your own personal safety, and by extension, your family. Like if you get injured at training, or God forbid, every once in a while an agent would die during training or during a bank robbery or serving a warrant, the FBI really came through for those families. And so you don't really have that working at a bank typically, right? I mean, maybe you do, but I don't have that experience. So I can't talk to it.
I have that experience working in the fire department for years, many, many years. And it's interesting because no matter what your politics is, when somebody's hurt,
Correct.
somebody is trapped, it's just like, oh my God.
Everything goes away.
Everything goes away. You're there for the family. You're there for the person itself. So yeah, I totally understand it. Like a friend of mine, I was coming back somewhere and I was getting on a plane, and an alert went off on my phone that a friend of mine who I used to work with in the fire department died.
Oh, geez.
Fell through a roof. And I literally was just like, I was next in line to the ticket agent, and I'm like, I just had a friend of mine die. I just got notified,
Yeah.
And you recognize the name, and you recognize, oh my God, this is a guy who... It's impactful.
Yeah. And I don't want to say, I definitely don't want to say that the FBI is better because we take that more seriously than someone would at, McDonald's. Like, there might be that same level of intensity and camaraderie and fellowship even at McDonald's. So I don't want to say that that doesn't exist at institutions other than just the most elite law enforcement agency in the world, right?
Yeah.
Because that's very, very egotistical as far as that institution goes. But that's just been my experience. That it was
Because it's also a military organization. Just like...
I would say it's paramilitary. Yeah.
Paramilitary organization.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to wrap this up. You have any other interesting stories that you want to share?
No, it is interesting from the point of view of having lived through it for 20 years, and you see, I've served President George Bush and Obama, right, and Trump and Biden, and then I didn't do Trump again because I retired before he came back into office. But you live through the political swings. Some people call them political highs. At the same time, agency you're working with, that's a political low, but you persist, right? The desire to serve the American people lived on, and that was kind of the throughput through all of that. And it was really nice. So I think public service is still highly honorable thing to do. So anybody out there willing and wanting to do it, I would highly encourage them to do it.
Okay. Any regrets about working for either the FBI, being in the military, or Russian?
It
We're
can
going to talk more.
be-
I'm going to have you back so you can talk more Russian.
Yeah, well, it can be a solitary life. Like I never found someone that I loved enough to marry or anything else. So I don't have the experience of frequently moving and subjecting a family to that stress. So there's a whole different stress level that
Because you went from South Dakota to DC to Chicago to New York
Minneapolis,
to.
I mean, yeah, tons and tons of moves. So when it comes to my career, I had it super easy because
Yeah.
I didn't have a family to think about and all that. I lived a very selfish career, if that makes sense. So I have the utmost respect for people who are married and have kids who do that because it's got to be orders of magnitude more difficult than what I did. So yeah, that would be the only regret would be, but it's also a big plus, right? Like the only regret I have is I didn't really dedicate the time for those intimate, long-lasting personal relationships like marriage. But on the other hand, we've been friends for 20 years.
Yeah.
I've had other friends and friendships that have been sustained throughout the years that are, to me, equally satisfying. So it's hard to say I regret that.
Yeah, but we
So-
were also talking about things like investing in friendships.
Yeah.
You have to invest in friendships.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
you just can't go, you text your buddy, or you just can't go months without replying back or weeks without replying back.
Right.
Even if it's to say, hey, I'm busy right now, let me talk to you later, which at times, when we were texting back and forth, you were busy, I was busy.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where it gets complicated to maintain a friendship.
That's right.
But if you say, or like I said before, hey, I'm at a fire right now, let me talk to you later. Or I'm with the mayor right now, let me talk to you
Right.
later.
And it might be that later might be 3 weeks, but I know that what follows through after a terrific fire, horrible fire, or what follows after having to meet the mayor on a public service or a media type
Right.
event. It's like, so knowing each other well enough to give each other the grace and being mature enough to recognize that those aren't personal insults is what makes it able to sustain that friendship. So,
Yeah, I totally agree.
but that's a skill set you have to develop.
Yeah. So, Mike, I hope to have you back on this podcast, All About Nothing,
Yeah.
so we could talk about more of your intelligence career.
Yeah, of course.
Love to hear more about. I'm sure our audience would love to hear more about Russian and anything
Yeah,
else you have to
that's-
share. And
Yeah, I shudder to think about what I was doing in my 20s and where I was going, the places I was visiting. I look back and I'm going, wow.
yeah, this is where I were. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Mike, for
Yeah, it's a
coming
real
on. I
pleasure,
hope to
as
see
always.
you again.
Yeah, let's do it again.
All right, and this is All About Nothing. Will Knight. Catch you guys later.